Good morning. Once more, this is Norma Talks on a Wednesday morning. This is the first Wednesday of August, so therefore I've put out a reading for August. But before I introduce that, I want to remind people what happened in the reading towards the end of July. I had said that as of around the 20th of July to the end of that month, that there would be some either information, I can't remember the exact words and I didn't go back and re-listen at the moment, that would be coming forth. And so in a way, when I put this reading out this morning, because sometimes I did it quite early because sometimes the mail doesn't move the photograph that I take of it into my email as quick as I would like. So I looked at this and I honestly thought, do I want to read this? But in light of what I was getting towards the end of last month, as I quickly try and share this effectively, there we go, and I'll just break that, whoops. I even had trouble around with this on top of some emails I had. You will see the first couple of symbols of the heavy, well, especially the devil, is a heavy emotional symbol. It really talks about being, what do you call it, contained and restricted and emotionally. And now I just want to bring some sort of facts up. Towards the end of the month, there was a lot of exposure of some false information that people had been covering up and saying different things. And to me, this is still continuing. Now, some of us watch other things besides mainstream media and are aware of what's happening or what's going on behind the scenes. But many people do not look at that. They just take what's being said in, on the regular TV. So what I see here in probably, and we're already at the 4th, I think it is today, of August. I was going to say up until around probably the 7th, which is pretty well a week, isn't it? It's first 7 days. A lot more emotions, a lot more things are going to be exposed. A lot more things are going to come out. And there's going to be choices people are going to have to make. People are going to have to choose to believe or not believe. They're going to choose as to how or what they're going to say or what they're not going to say. And so there's a lot of emotionality in here. And that actually filtrates through the rest of the reading. But we've got the world sitting here. Oh, I forgot to say the second symbol was the High Priestess, which is also an emotional card and about decisions as far as I'm concerned. But the third card, which runs from, as I said, about the 7th, probably to the 10th or 11th of the month, is the world where things are working to come back into balance. Now, to me, it doesn't feel imbalanced. It totally is out. I feel like this. I'm kind of rocking. But the symbol, if you look carefully, is all about balance. Balance, everything about it is, oops, I'm making it too big. All about balance and how that works. And so I think people will be striving to kind of understand things, but I think it'll be difficult because more is going to come out. And why do I say that? Is because the next symbol is the King of Swords, which is, again, defensive. And like, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to know this. But in the back of that symbol, there's 2 little birds that reflect back to the High Priestess. To choice. You have a choice. You can put your head in the sand, or you can be open to other possibilities and maybe truths. And sometimes it's not, and I'm going to speak further on that when I finish this, about how we often will not want to see, boy, that's touchy. We might not want to see. Now, as we go further in, coming in further into the month, we have the Queen of Cups. Again, self-denial. If any of you know about tarot, down below it is the 2 of Cups. The cup looks very different from what the Queen of the Cups is holding. So her imagination is blowing things up out of proportion. And again, denial perhaps of exactly where she is in relation to her life. So this again depicts that things are not what they seem. We might pretend, we might exaggerate, we might think, but that's not necessarily what's happening. And then as we come on down to the row of 3 that I have down here to support that 5, we have, oh, guess what? The 5 of Swords, conflict. You can see the little light from my camera when I'm taking the shot. The conflict, again, defensiveness. We've got the King of Swords up here, the 5 of Swords down here. Both are what I call defensive symbols, protecting the self, protecting the heart, not wanting to maybe listen. My way is the highway, my way or the highway kind of attitude. Do as I say or don't, and then it creates conflict because somebody else doesn't agree. And things get really steamy until around that magical 20th, this look feels like about the 23rd of the month. And I almost want to take a deep breath and say, oh, thank goodness that energy shifts, because now we get the King of Pentacles who sort of sits there and is aware and been through everything and understands, followed by the 2 of Cups, which is healing, communication. So somewhere in here, the truth's going to come out at some degree that's going to bring harmony. We're not going to be fighting over, is this right, is that wrong, is whatever, because not that we have much room to fight and as a general public, because if we say anything that's not in the mainstream of the correct so-called concepts, then we get censored. So we have to really here find a place, but this is what I like as I bring this down further here. This 10 of Pentacles, that means this again, it's a communication symbol. So the 2 of Cups and the 10 of Pentacles has a communication element to it. But here you have all the reserves, all the opportunities, all the elements of where you're wanting to go and what you're wanting to do. This is going to be a very interesting month. It's maybe a rough ride for the beginning part, up and down. I just feel the whole thing until we get to the King of Pentacles here, as I said, about the 23rd of August. It is not easy going. So be prepared to hear, see, or whatever, all sorts of different things. And some of it will be real, some won't. Some will be defending, some won't. There's a lot of denial going on. If we even look on the sides, which I like to look at, what we see here is the Devil's 5 of Swords and the 10 of Pentacles. We can have a stance which ties us up emotionally, which we will defend to the end, but communication is really what's required. The same thing on this side, where we blow things up in our mind and say, no, 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 I don't want to see that because that's not what I want to see or know, only to find a communication is important in order to create what it is ever you want. I love the middle row. If you just take it as straight symbology, that everything is there, everything is here in this middle row. But it's the side trips, it's the side elements, it's the pieces of the puzzle that aren't coming together. So I just want you to know that this month is going to be probably one of topsy-turvy, but the key is communication. The key is all knowing what you are. So I'm going to stop the share on this. And I'm going to come back to me, and I'm going to talk about what I find quite often in my readings for people. And I have over time found this out. I just put this card here. Now, let's talk about deception for a moment. Now, many of us feel that in some ways there has been some deception that has gone on about what is real and what isn't. I don't know. From my personal viewpoint, I have always believed in a democracy where you have a choice, you have a point, you can say your point of view and people can say, forget it, or, oh, that sounds reasonable. But when you are not allowed to have your point of view, to me, that's not democracy at all. And in fact, there's another word that we could use for that. And that's been proven through time and space. When you have restriction, when you restrict your people. So we have deception, but we can't really always figure out what that deception is. And so there is always underground underground processes. And I have to tell you, I have a past life that I remember being part of the underground in Germany during the Nazi years. Unfortunately, I ended up dying there because I was found. But at the same point, I kind of remember a lot of the bits and pieces that have often come up. I went, oh my God, this sounds so familiar. I've heard this before. So we can deceive ourselves, or we not, or not. Now, I find that often what happens in readings, and I'm not saying about the situation that's happening in our world right now, but in life, we end up with a precept or an idea or a belief, and then we feel that we have to defend that idea and that belief sort of to the end. And we're not open to what other people say. Now, one of the things that I had to learn as a consultant was to put my viewpoints aside totally, because what is my personal truth and what is their truth can be night and day. And I don't believe in the judgment element. And I can't judge them for having that truth because their experience has led them to that. But what I find a lot do is deny the feelings that they really feel. So what we've got here is a sense of, here, this is where I stand on this, but they deny a lot of their own feelings. That sort of goes hand in hand somehow. The more structured you are, the more you go into denial. So, and they have all sorts of defensive ways of explaining themselves, or mostly by not explaining themselves. They just go, my way. You know, the old sayings we were raised with sometimes, my way or the highway, do it my way, I'm right, you're wrong. Very black and white. I wore black and white today deliberately because I think life is more gray. It's not just black and it's not just white sometimes. Sometimes it's in the middle. And that's where communication is so important, that we can communicate different ideas and different points of view, etc. Now, one of the things I have written down here, how do we do defensiveness? The most common one is known as when we sit back and we fold our arms and we just shut down that emotional area. We may not even say a word, but our body language will tell us. Our body language can also mean stepping back. We're going to put back. I don't know about that. But often what happens, we move forward more in an aggressive way. In other words, if you don't believe in me, look out. And unfortunately, in relationships, that happens a lot. Now, if you follow how come we get defensive, is usually because underneath we feel unsure, uncertain. And it's that helplessness that we are actually defending. It is the helpless or the fear of being helpless. Fear of, like a lot of people over history. If you just read loads of history, which I did, I had a minor in history. People who had control of a situation in history got more and more afraid because of the masses out there. So they began to go against the masses that were out there in order to protect what they felt was theirs, and either by birth or right or whatever. And so what they were really not acknowledging was that they were really beginning to feel helpless because they hadn't made the, I'm thinking in terms of history, the proletariat, as it was called, the masses of people, they didn't really communicate to them, or they didn't give them, it's going right back to France where, oh God, what was her name that said, give them bread, and forgetting that flour, because they wanted bread because they were starving, forgetting that flour made bread, but it also made cake. So she said, well, give them cake. Like, so ignorant, so out of touch with what's happening. And today we might laugh about that, but it wasn't funny for all the people that were starving and were very hungry. In fact, they had a revolution over that one in the end, but they were killing people. They were putting their heads in the guillotine and taking their heads off if you opposed King Louis XIV, I believe it was. So anyway, the thing is that we have to become aware of where we go into defensiveness. Where do we go into to defend the sense of what we believe, what we think, what we feel? It's because underneath that, you're going to feel helpless about something. And if you really go deep enough, and I know I've talked about this before, we feel unworthy. And that comes up a lot in the work I do. The people feel unworthy of this, unworthy of that. And so they want to stay away from that unworthy feeling, but that's a spiritual matter. When you're connected spiritually and you know that you are loved for you, no matter what, you have you know you're supported, because that universal love force that I talk about has no judgment. Oh, that's what you're doing. Okay, go ahead, see if that works. Oh, that's all right. And they support, well, the energy will support you with whatever if you feel. But when you get defensive, and especially when you begin to get aggressive because someone doesn't agree with you, historically, I have to say that has not worked out. If you look at history, if you look at what's happened over time and space, maybe today it looks like it's working out, but over time it will not. Key is communication, honest communication. And again, I have to say, what is the truth? What's your truth may not be my truth, may not be my friend's truth, but we at least communicate and become aware and share knowledge, share information. As a teacher of metaphysics for many years, sometimes I have thoughts that all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, that opens up a whole new, you might say, can of worms. Let me look at that. Let me see that. And then I share that one way or the other with students, with clients, as I have grown over the years, until I formulated a basic premise of how I believe life works. So when I looked at that reading this morning, I really did not want to read it. Oh no, I don't want to read this. But when we go in, and it's not like the surface. It's really about, we have a choice. And that's that high priestess. Like, there's one thing I say, that we always have a choice. We can choose to follow our spiritual path that supports us, that enlivens us, that gives us who we are. And unfortunately, I find a lot of people today don't have that. Or we can choose to be emotional and not trust anybody and deal and work with their unworthiness and not in an ineffectual way. Or we can just relax and know that we're loved for who we are, and that we can communicate if we just get off our own thing of what we believe. I'm guilty in some ways of that myself. I can get like, this is my truth. And yeah, I had to learn years ago, no one wanted to hear what my truth was. So I just had to relax and believe and just carry on. And now people are beginning to say, oh, yeah, you've got a point here. And the work I do, it brings people together into that philosophical awareness of how important they are, how loved they are, everything that is in there. So think about this month and how it's definitely carried on from July, which started around the 20th of July. And it looks like it's a whole 30 days, so to speak. But as we move on into September, if we carry on from where we were this month, that looks much, much easier. And trustingly, I really pray that it is much, much better. I give thanks for watching. I give thanks to the people, especially the new subscribers. Thank you very much. And your comments and your likes, etc. Blessings, and enjoy who you are, where you are, and what you're doing. Have a good day.